personal questions? I should have asked you that
That's
before,
fine.
but okay,
Yeah.
because we wanted to get to know you a little bit right at the beginning.
Yeah. That's
Do
great.
make you a little more human for our audience who's like, oh,
We're
DPN.
not worthy.
I'm a real person. I
Yeah,
promise.
exactly.
Yeah.
I live
All
at the
right.
agency.
Okay. We are live on YouTube. Hooray. And now
All
I gotta go
right.
post
Woo!
that on the Besties group. Sorry, getting all of the. So if you guys want to go ahead and get started, you can
Great.
while I do the tech stuff.
All right. Hey, welcome everyone to VO Booth Besties Popcast. We're here to help working voice actors get your most important questions answered by industry pros who know. If you haven't joined our amazing VO Booth Besties Facebook group, well, you should, because we're super fun and full of information, and it's just a wonderful community. We also encourage you to visit our website, voboothbesties.com. No, isn't it just boothbesties.com?
We actually own both.
Yeah.
We own both. Okay, so you can find us. But we have all of our podcasts there. We also have links to all the demo producers we've interviewed, but you can also find all of our podcasts anywhere you listen to podcasts. So now, without further ado, let's meet our guest. Over to you, JT.
Okay, and I promise, only scripted part.
Really quick.
Oh, hold on.
Sorry, we need a little further ado. NJ, you posted the link to the Zoom on the Besties group, and I can't delete it. It won't let me. So that's why everybody keeps trying to join the Zoom, but we'll need to send them the YouTube link. Can you delete that really quick? Otherwise, we're just going to keep getting people.
I did already change it to. Oh, hang on. Yes.
There we go. It still shows the YouTube link. I mean the Zoom link, even though you changed it. I'm sorry, Vince. This is
You're fine.
how this goes live.
It's okay.
This is what happens when we go from a weekly podcast to popcasts once a month. We forget how to do everything.
Come to YouTube, not
Podcast
Zoom.
muscles.
There we go. All right, we're good. It fixed it on there. So hopefully.
Okay, so JT, introduce our guest.
So, most of you do know Vince LeBica. Vince started at DPN Talent Agency in Beverly Hills, California, 11 years ago. DPN is a top-tier voiceover agency in the U.S. Wasn't long before Vince climbed their ranks to become a talent agent. While striving to attain his title in less than 2 years, Vince established a commercial youth voiceover department at DPN. Very impressive. And over the past 9 years, he turned this department into one of the most competitive commercial children's voiceover divisions on the West Coast, which is awesome. In addition to working with kids, Vince's main focus is general market commercial, promo, and occasionally celebrity business, which is very cool. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for the intro, Jen. I we have two Jens, so I just call you JT. Is that
Yep.
how?
And I'm NJ, and I go by NJ, so we're different.
Perfect. That sounds great. Thank you for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
So I understand since the last time I saw you, you're a dad.
I am indeed. Yes, it's amazing. Every day is a different situation. Yesterday he actually broke out in hives for the first time. Apparently he's allergic to the powder form of formula, which that's what the doctor told us. And I was like, of course, just our luck, he's allergic to formula. No, so a little Benadryl yesterday and it's all gone now. So, but yeah, it is amazing. I do, it really does change your perspective of kind of like what's important. I think like just this year alone, things that used to make me like, tick me off or get under my skin a little bit. I'm like, it really does kind of align your compass, your moral compass on like what's truly important in life. I know we all strive to be like the best we can in our business, but believe me, this will all be here. When you come back at it, right? It's all still there, right? So yes, I'm super happy, and yeah, little guy's just getting bigger by the day. It's crazy. It'll be 6 months on the 4th of October. So
wow.
Wild how fast it goes. So
what kind of hobbies do you have outside of just being this superstar talent agent? So what are what's the behind the facade, so to
behind the scene, I try to surf at least a couple times a week. I used to just be like pretty much not an everydayer, but I was at least like a 5-day a week guy, depending on the waves. but that's like the one thing that like kind of keeps me out of the gym. I'm not really like a gym guy. I need something that like I need to fool my mind into working out, that I don't feel like I'm working out, but then at the end I'm like, oh, I'm really tired, you know?
I love it.
Right. And so yeah, I mean, I'd say that like really like the water, being at the beach a lot. Me and my wife, we live like in Redondo Beach, so we're pretty close to the pier. And so between that and kind of like in recent years, kind of becoming a little bit of like a foodie, you know, like
Oh yeah.
I used to totally like be like the like who cares human garbage disposal, like just eat, go get back to work or do whatever I'm doing. And now I'm like I take a little bit more pride in like, all right, maybe we try this or you know, so I'm kind of adventuring that a little bit and just trying to have, you know, it's so funny because like you put so much time into your career and then at one point you start to say like, okay, well, I'm nearing 40 here, and maybe I should start to travel a little bit more. And so
Live life. Yeah.
Yeah.
right, like you know, because like at the end of the day, like when you die, you're not going to be like, I should have worked harder. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
so, there's all that type of stuff where I'm kind of like starting to, you know, not ease back, but I've already kind of built a little bit, so I have a little bit of a foundation going, so I can kind of do the things that you know, before we were just me and my wife were just totally just, you know, wake up, be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. just working, you know. So
Dinks. You were dinks. You
yeah,
no longer, well, you still are, but it does, like you said, it reprioritizes things, right?
For
Because
sure.
even for me, right now we have two teenagers and we are big on investment. I know your wife works in finance too, and we're really mindful of that. But I told my husband, I said, you know, when you put it in perspective, we have really 3 summers left with our kids. And all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, 3? That like suddenly that's a very real, tangible number. And I'm like, you know, let's spend the money on the thing. Like you said, like we're gonna go to
Yeah.
Japan next summer. Like we gotta start making sure we don't miss opportunities to really just, yeah, live life, enjoy the food, go to the place, do the things. So I'm totally aligned with you.
that's it. Because at the end of the day, like, you know, when you and your husband look back, you're like, oh, I'm so glad we took that trip to
Yep.
Japan. So
Yep.
glad
Exactly.
things are going to stand out. You know, it's not going to be the, hey, I got every casting out quicker than anybody else. You know what I mean? Or whatever it may be, right? So it's it is important that you because I think also that side fuels, it feeds my other side. Because like sometimes like it was at, you know, and to get a little personal here, me and my wife, it took a little while for us to have a kid, and we that was a journey. And so it was at one point you kind of start to looking like, all right, like, is this all we have? And how are we gonna make do with this if we can't have a child? And so, you know, it does, it really, well, it not only makes it that much better now that we have our little Bougie Bear.
Oh,
I call him my little bear, right? But yeah, it really does. It makes me also want to be a better agent, I think now too, right? Because like I'm more time sensitive on my day because I do want to spend time with my son at the end of the day, and I do want to have that morning with him or whatever. And so now it's like I know I'm almost a little bit more Terminator-esque because I know I have to be very diligent and just super precise with my time organization. And actually it has helped me as an agent. I do honestly feel that. So yeah.
That's
I can
great.
see
Well,
that completely. Like having gone from, I have my 7-year-old at home, and then I have a 21-year-old and you know, 3 other kids in between.
which is weird because she's only 25. I don't
Right.
really know. Yeah,
Right.
she looks like she's 25. We don't know how she did it.
I was a child bride.
It's a thing. Yeah. Okay.
But it's I feel this weird dichotomy in my life because my 7-year-old looks just like my 21-year-old, right? So it's like I have this, I'm like, wait, you grew up, but you didn't. And it's this constant reminder that he's going to grow up before I can even blink. Like it's they grow up so fast. So when I'm sitting going, what should I be doing with my time? It's let me maximize where I'm prioritizing my time. Maximize and prioritize.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, I love it. So let's shift a little bit. We know Vince LeBica is this guy that goes and gets things done, right? So let's talk about what that looks like at DPN, because I noticed in Dallas that your specific approach to being an agent is that you're not just sitting back and waiting for stuff to come to you. You're going out and getting it. And I think that ties into our negotiation conversation. So I really want to hear, how did you get to that point?
You know what? It was consistent outreach, right? So like back to time, when everybody was in COVID, I used to spend 40 hours a month in the car driving to Beverly Hills every day, so you have to think that's 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, times 4 weeks. So you're basically grinding out in the car, and it's so when COVID hit. And even before that, right, I was very big on outreach, but I think when COVID hit, the way I looked at it is I have another work week given to me in time back, and I could utilize that as I see fit. Now, everybody knows interest is compounding. All interest is compounding, right? The banks know it. Everybody, that's how the financial world works. And I look at time as compounding. So if I can reach out to 2 people a day that I don't know, and do that 5 days a week, and I'm just throwing 2 as a number out there. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, right? Depending on my day. But if I can reach out to a certain amount of people every week, times that by 4 weeks, times that by 12 months. Now, how many people did I connect with that I've gotten new contacts back who now send me opportunity? And so, I do love all the casting directors I work with. I truly do. But I also have a great relationship with a ton of people at agencies. And so my whole side of my business is cultivating talent on one side, but procuring opportunity on the other. Because they have to intertwine. Because I could sign everybody in the world if I don't have the opportunities to match that up, I'm no good. So at the end of the day, I really looked at it like time management. And I since then have really, I mean, even to this morning, there was 2 castings on companies that I have worked for many, many years. And both of them I didn't get. And so I had to do a quick release, which is I emailed about 7 or 8 people that I knew. I called a couple people and I got the script in 20 minutes. So it was, the fact is, and it was as simple as they missed a letter on my email. When they like, we sent this, it was at 11:06. And I was like, I didn't get it. So it was as small as that. But see, like, for instance, I think as agents, we really can't be like, if you're just the guy who's just like working off the select VO or the platforms and the things are waiting for them to come in, that's great. Those opportunities are there. But the problem with that is everybody's getting those opportunities. I think what separates me from the rest is that I may get, monthly X amount of opportunities, that maybe 10 opportunities that nobody else has. And I think, or maybe 3 or 4 people in the country only got them. And so for those reasons, I feel that's what kind of makes me continue to drive, because they're not out in the public. And I know and it makes me want to do better, because then it's like, maybe I'm competing only against 4 other agents. Well, then now my odds of booking this are a lot higher. And if I correlate that back now to my quality control on the audition process, right? So if I can, the first layer is talent, second layer is my booth director, and third layer would be me. So I listen to every audition that comes through. So if I have 10 auditions, I send to 40 people. You guessed it, I'm listening to 400 people. So it's like my ears are very tuned, but at the end of the day too, like, I count on the talent to edit their files, cut them down, make sure there's no dead air before they're slayed, all that stuff. But then the booth director also says, hey, so I require usually like 2 takes minimum. So sometimes an A, B, and a C. But then that gives me the ability to say, hey, I take the first line from the third take, match it with the tag off the first, and give the body of the middle, right? Now I got my take. And so I think really it boils down to, also, I'm not sending to everybody, right? Like, the problem with now a lot of castings, it's open gender, open ethnicity, open, and there's no specifics. Do I send to everybody on my roster? Well, that would be nearly impossible. So I have to go off brand coordination. So meaning I go and look up the brand, find out who the last 10 people that they booked off of by finding spots on YouTube or why am I running? iSpot.tv, and just basically go through and do a little homework, and then know who I'm going to send to. And maybe the spec adheres a little one way, but hearing something different. And so I'll mix up that group a little bit, but at the end of the day, I'm really only sending to 40 people. I got to cut it down maybe to 25 or 30. But it's like at that point, I'm more so trying to cast properly, because the worst thing a talent can do is oh, I just get everything. Well, what do you mean you
Yes.
get everything? Well, what if you get stuff that and you're 25 years old, and you're getting a 50 plus script? Well, why would that make sense? That's just spinning wheels, and that's just it just feels, I'm sure, from a talent perspective, that it's inconsiderate of the agent because they're just sending you everything. It's blanketing the world. And then how do you get the options that you truly think that can actually do the job, right? And so I pad my auditions with time too. Like everybody knows, probably everything's like 9 a.m. due. Well, it could be due at 2, could be due at 11. It gives me a little bit of time to say, go back and I'd call you and say, hey, Jen, this was great. Give me a little bit something like this. I have a little bit of time before I can submit it. And so then therefore you're like casting properly, but you're also getting the results that you need. And I think me, by being very specific, cutting things down, uniform slating people, I'll have booth directors sometimes uniform slate. I think I've mentioned this before, but sometimes on like a big heavy truck audition that I have for males, I'll Juliet reslate everybody. So then it's a female starting the slate, right? So then you get the contrast of voices, of vocal qualities there. It's as small as that, right? And I think these small things build up to where it just says, all right, when people send me stuff, they know that they're going to get quality. They're not going to get 1,000 options back. It's going to be thought, and there's just a process there. Sorry.
You say no, that's wonderful, but you say these are small things. I
They're not small.
argue these are not small, because a lot of agents, what I'm hearing from you is you are invested. You are invested not just in your time and trying to meet the client's needs. You are also invested in your talent. There's communication there. There's a relationship there. I mean, that's not a small thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a lot of talent tell me, they're like, you act more like a manager.
Yeah.
I'm like you're an agent, so there's
One
that.
word
Sorry,
you
I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're fine. I would say one word you say over and over and over, just in the time we've been talking, is time. That you're investing time, you're mindful of your client's time, and you're mindful of your talent's time. And I think that that's one thing that makes DPN stand out a little bit. People are like, oh, they're so exclusive, but it's really that you value your talent and you value your clients, and you want to make sure that you've got a roster that's ready to go, that you have a roster that's pared down, so you don't have to. I mean, I'm picturing you trying to go on iSpot and, oh, I've got an ad for Google. Who did Google hire? Like, that's above and beyond to the extreme. So as we shift the conversation a little bit to your really, really unique perspective on negotiation, I think that's what it comes down to as well, is that we want to be mindful of our clients' time. And uh, who we're talking to today most of the time are people who don't have an agent. They don't have somebody to negotiate with them. And in 2024, the chances of signing with an agent have gone like, much, much, much less probability. So when someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I saw your post on LinkedIn, I'd love to hire you. What are your rates? And I say, well, I use the GVAA rate guide. If you just go there, you can look for what you want. They don't do it. Every single time I've done that, they're like, well, have a nice day. I don't have time for that, right? So how do we be mindful of their time and investment in the beginning of a conversation, but get to a place where we can negotiate?
I think so. It kind of boils down to what's your sweet spot, right? If you were like a medical narration person, or you had your medical jargon was very high up there, or automotive was maybe your sweet spot, or fast food, or whatever it may be, right? Like where does your voice lean towards? And I think of conflicts immediately, and I say, like, fast food's a little generic, but like stuff that really kind of, you're like, hey, this is my jam, right? And I think when pricing things out, it correlates down to one thing, right? Could you make more money elsewhere? And are you going to conflict yourself? Because let's start off really quick. Even without exclusivity, the conflict still exists.
Yep.
So it may not be exclusive, and the only way that works is if two brands come to you and they're non-exclusive, you can work for both of them. But 9 times out of 10, I've had people where they have these like VO skeletons in their closet, and they do something and it's at a 3-year term or a 5-year term. And within that time, they establish an agent, the agent sends them a union breakdown that could make them, 6 digits, let's say a year, and they can't work on it because they have something currently running because technically they're held to that conflict. And so when pricing things out, I think it boils down to you want to have a medium rate, right? So even if you're like, if you go on SAG-AFTRA and you pull up the commercial contracts, taking aside TV out of the picture, right? The most frequently used rate right now, the term is digital. Now, producers don't really, even at the end of the day, I have so many producers reach out to me like, oh, it's digital. Well, digital has multiple facets. So you could have OTT, which is OTT/CTV, and that's over the top streaming. So that means it's over the top of linear broadcast. And CTV is connected television. These are the same thing, two different terms. They're used I just kind of blanket and usually use both of them. But that's $56.25 a spot via the union. Now that's the talent portion. So if you were to add all the bells and whistles, pension and health 20%, and SIG fees 20%, you're at roughly $7,900 a spot. Now, if you're quoting a SAG rate, they're already getting a deal, right? If you go to the GVA rate guide and you were to find a median between the two, I think even on the lower end, you'd quote the GVA rate guide, or this on the higher end, the SAG-AFTRA rate, if depending on the conflict area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to just go and say, this is, first off, nobody really should be doing non-union automotive because that is the number one still highest paying portion of VO to date, I'd say conflict or area of VO to date. But fast food is a great example. Fast food can make you a lot of money. And so if you're doing something that's non-union, you at least want to make sure that you're falling into this median range, or at least on the higher range for a conflict that you're pretty strong in. Let's just talk really quick. We can I can go over the rates. Via the union, online pre-roll. So anybody who's watching there, you'd have a category OTT, which is $56.25. And that includes all digital. So that $56.25 includes online pre-roll. And the difference between the two is online pre-roll is something if you were to go to YouTube and pull up something you wanted to watch and you had to watch a commercial prior to that, that's online pre-roll. And so that's only living online. And then obviously you have subsidiary categories, which is like, I call it industrial web, which might be the client website only, or like an online portal where somebody has to log in and then your voice would pop up. And then let's call it social media. So there's paid social and there was organic social. Organic's just living on their feed, it's not a paid ad. So if you're on Instagram and an ad pops up, now that's a paid ad. They paid for that. And so those rates are different, but you can start at the top where that OTT rate includes, it's a whole package. And then you can kind of break down. So online pre-rolls, $25.50 a spot via the union. And social media comes out to about $1,000 a year for one spot via the union. So you can kind of take that as you will, but I think the GVA rate guide, I think is great, but I think finding a median, because that's I think would be, and you have to think SAG rates listed, that's a bottom barrel rate technically via the union. That's the minimum they can pay you via the union. So if you're quoting a SAG rate, even though you're not union, it's still within, I think jurisdictionally, well within your that range of like, hey, the GVA, I think the GVA rate guide for online OTT is 3,600, I want to say a spot, something, or 3,200. I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say it's something along those lines. So you have to think there were only a couple $1,000s difference here. And so I think staying within that margin. What you don't want to do is I think I mentioned this in Dallas, but like I use math to combat. I like combating with math because it's very eye-opening for people. And it takes all the emotion out of it. Because what you guys can't do as talent is get emotional. Oh, this guy's lowballing me, and it's like, it's a lot easier to say, for instance, let's say they offered you $400. And I think I used this exact example last time. $400 is you take the offered rate and you divide it by the market rate. So if you were to it's for $400 for an online pre-roll spot. Hey, this is all we have. Great. Thanks so much for reaching out. You would take $400 divided by 25.50. And what do you get? 15.999%. So that's 16%. You'd say, hey, so-and-so, thank you so much. I really appreciate the business. I'm definitely want to work on this for you, but right now you're only offering me 16% of what I'd normally make in this category. Is there any way to make it 60%? or if you can offer me 2 spots, is there any way to make it, 40%, right? I can do 40% if you gave me 2 spots. Now, what are you doing? You're getting more, because with volume and time comes discount. And that's how that works. If they're offering you a low bottom rate, hey, can you give me a couple spots and I can do it at this. But I think using math, that producer is going, wow, we're only offering 16% of what that person would normally make. And the way I put it, I used this trick recently, and this producer kind of got a little snooty with me, and I was like, John, what if I told you you'd only make 16% of your salary this year and had to do the same job? How would you feel? And he's like, well, and I was like, well, now that we put it that way, I go, they're not doing, my clients are doing this as a hobby. This isn't like a side hustle. This is how they make money and put food on the table. So, let's just apples to apples really quick. And so he immediately he's like, now that you say that, all right, and he went to talk to the client and came back and he tripled the rate for me right off the bat. And so something like that, it's more of an educational process to try to help these producers understand that, hey, you may be new to this, you may not be aware of what the voiceover rates cost, but I'm here to tell you, like, this is what I normally would make, and this is the percentage you're only offering me at this time. And so it pulls all the emotion out of the conversation, and it's very easy to combat because math is black and white. There's no gray. So it's a great trick that I've used for many years, and it's gotten me so much more. I've gotten literally so much more money for my talent because of it. And I think when negotiating for self, just know your worth. Don't be so, I understand everybody has to put food on the table, but just know the fact that, hey, this is what these standard market rates are. I'm a professional in this business. And this is, and I think what helps is the talent that I see that have the most success in self-negotiation are the ones that aren't afraid to lose the job.
Yeah.
Because there's a quality that comes out whether you're on the phone or on the email, that immediately somebody can pick up. There's the sense of
desperation.
Desperate, yeah. I call it the desperado syndrome, right? People just they're like, hey, I need it, I want it, I'll take it. And it's like the moment you sell yourself for 10 cents, you're worth 10 cents, right? And so I think it's hard. It's hard because these producers do hop around. I have people that I talk to one at agency, and then they're at another, and then they're at another. And before you know it, it's hard it's like maybe that producer remembers that and he goes, oh yeah, let's reach out to so-and-so because they took my rate last time. It's fine.
Why don't they know, Vince? This is the part that kind of eats me up. Why don't producers, agents, I get it that for so many voiceover is in fact kind of their last.
We're the last stop on the train.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But I do find it fascinating that literally there is representation through SAG. There is, if it's not, hey, maybe they're just not doing, looking at their research, but I just think it's funny that there's they don't know. Why don't they know?
Probably a part, I don't want to say this, I say this lightly, but I think the climate of today's market, there's a lot of laziness.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have a lot of people that they're just told, hey, this is your budget, go out and do it. And I'd say partially, not all completely laziness, but it's the factor of maybe they're newer at the job. Maybe they're a younger producer. They're just hungry to make it happen. And they put it out as is because they were given 12 cents as a budget. And that's what they're going to put it out as.
Yeah.
The problem I try to explain is, when I talk to people, I say, the old production saying is good, fast, cheap, and you can only pick 2, right? So good and fast won't be cheap. Cheap and fast won't be good. It's triangle. So whatever you're going to pick, you can slide down and it won't be the other side, right? And so I try to just say like, hey, I told the guy last week, I will not be the cheapest. He's like, well, if we did, and I was like, I get it. Totally. I was like, but I'm going to offer you a premium product. And if you want that, I can deliver that, no problem, but I will not be the cheapest. And I can guarantee you that. And I said that vocally to him, and it almost gave it the sense of he was like, well, now I just want to hear your auditions.
Right. If he picks anybody else, it's going to be substandard, right?
Of course. So it's almost like it's a mental thing too, where Jen, if I were to bring you into a dress shop and say, hey, these are all the dresses you can afford up front. The ones in the back, don't go in that back door though. Those are the really special ones. And those are the ones that you're probably not going to be able to afford. first thing you're going to want to do mentally, everything's been written off in the front room. You're like,
That's
I
right.
need to
Not interested.
yeah, I'm not interested in anything up here because it's not special. He didn't say it was special, right? So it's that kind of mentality that I use, that I'm saying, hey, no problem at all. And I've also where, a lot of these producers, they come in and they'll send me non-union stuff, and I won't agree with the rate, but I will submit, and I'll submit with a caveat. Hey, I can do this for not 11 deliverables, but 6 deliverables. Or I can do this, and if it's 11, it'll be at this price. I try to give them, hey, this is options. I have submitted to talent to bigger castings where if I can't really get through, or they're not, like, I'll send an email and I'm like, maybe they got it, maybe they didn't, and I don't get a response. I'll usually just put money signs next to them. And then they're like, oh, what were we loved your
money.
loved your talent. And I was like, oh yeah, did you see the money signs? They're like, what does that mean? I was like, it means they're negotiable. Wouldn't work. I'm not working for the rate, but hopefully, we can make something happen. And sometimes they get upset, and sometimes they come back and say, all right, well, what do you want? And the problem is when people do get upset, I say, well, no problem at all. If you don't, we can roll union with it. We don't have to negotiate at all. Like, that's the whole point of, like, hey, if you guys are going to go non-union, I'm here to tell you, like, I can offer you a better product. And you obviously chose my person because you're talking to me right now. So it's kind of like in that sense of, I will even submit, like, even with that guy was like, I want to hear your auditions. I sent him 10 great options. And he was like, wow, and even some I've had before, I've sent like 2 or 3. And
Okay.
this one woman last year, she offered me $5,000 for farm equipment. And I was like, okay. I came back with the amount of deliverables and everything, and I was like, more along the lines of $32,000. And she was like, we are far apart. I was like, we're planets apart. But I read one person for you. And I want you to know this is what $32,000 sounds like.
Wow.
And she was like, oh. And she came back, and I don't know, she was like, I probably felt like what a cocky asshole. But at the end of the day, she came back and we were like, we did a massive casting. And I want you to know, I probably read 1,200 people. Your one guy beat out everybody. She's like, we don't have the budget, but I want you to tell you, like, when I do, I'm coming to you first.
Oh, I love that.
And so, like, what am I trying to do is I'm trying to show that the market can't continue to just drop, that we have to continue to try, because the fact is gas costs more, milk costs more, everything costs more, right? Why are voiceover rates going down? And so that's a huge problem, because I said it, I think, in Dallas, I was like, this continues to happen, I'll be working at Trader Joe's in 10 years. So we need to
And you'll be the best bagger at Trader Joe's they've ever had.
Dude, no stress express, right? I will be hanging out at Trader Joe's. But I mean, really, I try to, because what happens is, even that's why I did the negotiation thing in Dallas, and I'm kind of talking about it now. I want this to be more of an active conversation. Everybody talks about the reads and getting better and this and that. Let's talk about the one thing that's most important, is us getting paid properly.
Yeah.
And if we, like, even people that are just starting out undermine their rate, it makes it harder for me even at the top to try to negotiate some of these things, because if they can get it somewhere else and it's good enough, sometimes just good enough works for them. And I want to try to make that known, that good enough sometimes always, I mean, I even told somebody last week, I was like, I totally get it. I was like, just remember, this is the last thing that your client's consumer is going to hear before they go and buy that product. And that's it. Like, usually the voice is the thing that resonates the most. And so
let me piggyback on that. So, I know you said you represent some celebrities, and all the 3 of us are not. We like to pretend we are.
Yes.
I know. But no, kind of speak to that a little bit, because talk about like a tilt. I mean, a lot of these producers, they'll suddenly make the budget. Now, granted, I get it. It's a notable voice, and I'm not trying to be dense. I understand it, but I do find it interesting, the disconnect between a quality voice actor, but then this budget that they'll allot for a celebrity. It just, yeah.
Well, and that kind of goes back to like a branding perspective too. They're like, hey, if we can get this person that's basically recognizable vocally, I mean, why not come up with the money? Because it just shows, you know, and I try to adhere, like, for instance, I have a guy that's, he has been on an ABC hospital show for many years. And I tried to pitch him out. And a lot of that, a lot of these guys, they're not auditioning, right? So I even sometimes have to check in with him. He's like, hey, by the way, I just pitched you out of this, and this, because then he knows at least I'm working on his behalf. But I try to adhere to the shows that they're on, right? So if he's the president of a hospital on a ABC show, maybe he should, what about some medical campaigns or something along the lines that would adhere to what they're known for, right? And so I tried to match that up like brand wise. You know, as of late, I think the celebrity stuff, they, if they're going to go celebrity, they don't really go mid-tier. Like if some of these brands, they're going straight to the top, you know, a McConaughey or a Jennifer Aniston or something along those lines. But there is this market for these, like, you know, they are on big rosters at CAA and WME and stuff, but I think quite frankly they get overlooked by that representation, and it's a lot easier for me to get them to carve out voiceover. Give me a shot. This is what I do. You know what I mean? And your main agent over there isn't probably actively looking at voiceover as a main source, like a good source of income. And so that's where I can kind of try to come in and be like that subsidized side voiceover guy that can help bring a couple bucks to some of these guys. And, you know, like I say, I always joke when I get on the phone, I'm like, this isn't going to change your life by any means. But, you know, while you're on vacation, I can have a car pick you up and you can be brought to a studio, record for 2 hours and make a great amount of money. And he's like, all right, great. You know, so there's that. I think the celebrities, though, I think, you know, the voiceover got out. Like it used to be like the redheaded stepchild of the business when I started. It was kind of like voiceover, you know, and now celebrities realize that they can be anywhere and make great money doing voiceover. And so I think the secret's out. And then, you know, not only that, but then if you look at the scale market, how many talent from when I started, there was like it was like you knew that there was some other big hitting agencies and what the rosters that they had, but now it's just it's probably 10x, 20x maybe market wise of the amount of people doing voiceover. And that said, there's a lot more content being created because of all these other digital platforms and all these other things that it just basically over the last 10 years have created the need for additional jobs, which is awesome. But the problem is right now is trying to make sure that like it's a slippery slope, right? If we can all kind of try to keep these rates as a community stronger, I think then we're all going to benefit from it versus going backwards in that sense to where it could unravel a little bit, you know?
Yeah. And
So
one of the
let's
biggest, I was going to ask one question really quick. One of the biggest reasons, well, we'll keep it short. One of the biggest reasons that talent charge what they do is because it creates conflicts. And I think a lot of newer talent don't really understand. You talked about VO skeletons in the closet that people come in with. Can you just give a quick explanation for some of our beginner and newer talent, why it matters, what are conflicts, and why we charge so much to prevent those?
Yes. So I would say conflicts are what you want, like the generic, you want like top conflicts in voiceover, or are we just gonna kind of generically blanket conflicts, what that means?
Either one. I think that most people don't even know what it means at the beginning. We talk about in perpetuity and they get, oh, I can't do anything in perpetuity. I'm like, you can if it's a corporate narration job that's never it's just living on their website. Like it only matters if it's going to create conflicts for you. And you
Exactly.
did a really good job, I feel like, of breaking that down.
Yeah, a conflict is going to take you out of the, like, so when you're conflicted to an area of voiceover, whether it be automotive, bath tissue, you know, you can go down the list. There is so many conflicts, right? You have tech, you have subcategories of conflicts, right? So tech, you have watches, tablets, computers, you have retail, you have basically big box, you have, I mean, there used to be an electronics, but not anymore. You have home improvement stores, you have drugstores, so there's all that retail side too. But conflicts it's basically you have to think of a parking lot. There's only so many cars you can put in that lot, and each car is a conflict, right? So you only have so many areas. If you're doing an automotive, you can't do other automotive because you're conflicted to that brand, because 9 times out of 10, you're doing stuff for Ford, Chevy's not going to hire you, nor would Ford want to hear you on a Chevy ad. And so be careful on these things like, for instance, you have a lot of dealerships that are doing local ads, right? So if it's a rate in term, in perpetuity, it should never be spoken of. I always tell people forever is a long time. I can give you a 10-year option, a 5-year option, a 3-year option. The 10-year option is going to be a massive number, but it's going to be the best per spot per year rate. And so that's the way you work that out, right? So with time or volume comes discount. So, again, boil that into your head. But conflicts, the moment you're doing something, you're not going to be able to do something else. So that's why it's so important for you guys to get the number numerically. It needs to make sense, because what you don't want is to do something that's 3 years, and then all of a sudden within that 3-year term, you've offered 10 other jobs that were maybe 3, 4, 5 times the amount that you made off that, right? And so what you're playing now is you're going from checkers to chess. And that's what I track conflicts for my talent. I have a massive, Drew, our business affairs guy, sends me a thing every week. I have every client's name on there, what their conflicts are, and to make sure I don't send them something that could conflict them with something they're currently on. I mean, I'm one person, so if we have close to 300 talent, you can imagine it can get a little convoluting without that. But for you as a talent, this is your business. This is your investment in yourself. You need to make sure that, hey, even if you have a conflict sheet at home, anytime you guys do a job, Excel spreadsheet, what you made, the date you worked, what conflict it's for, when the run time and the expiration date. Now you're free of that conflict. You can cross that off, right? When that expires. So to go through and make sure that you aren't really just kind of willy-nillying it, and then all of a sudden doing a job for one company when maybe the contract you signed 18 months ago had exclusivity in it, or they, so at the end of the day, you just don't want to put yourself, one, in a legal situation, two, in an area where you're going to lose money, because that's the biggest thing. Again, it's, you really want to be conscious of that. And I think that's why it's so important to at least to adhere to some SAG rates. The good part is everything outside of linear broadcast is trackable, right? You can go on the SAG rate guide and be like, hey, this is what digital radio costs for 8 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and a year. If you notice, SAG, really quick, my computer might die, so just give me 2 seconds. I just need to move it. I'm still here.
Okay. Well, while you're moving your computer, I'll just give a basic example for that. I did a job for a face cream company, right? And I only said 5 words, but they bought it exclusivity for 5 years. So that 5 words was a ridiculous amount of money, because I can't do any face creams. But I wouldn't have even been able to audition for that if I had done any face creams that were still running when that audition came into my inbox. So that's what we're talking about when we say conflict is something that you've done in the past that's still airing, whereas exclusivity is what they asked for when they gave me the audition. You can't do anything else for 5 years that's eczema face cream, right? So that's what that means. So, and I think JT has some questions for you. If we want to transition, we want to make sure we're really conscious of your time. We're back to
Yeah,
time.
I mean, you kind of took it in a different direction. I was just going to ask your best piece of advice for the talent who don't have you or representation looking out for their rates as they have to negotiate these waters on their own.
Yeah, I mean, I think what would be the best thing is to create a kind of a standardized rate guide for yourself, right? To go and do the homework prior, get all these rates up front, write them down, and then know that, like, you're gonna basically ice out certain areas of voiceover that you're like, hey, I'm gonna save this one. Like, I don't want to, if it's for automotive, let's say it's for local dealership, you're gonna do a rate and term, right? So it's like, oh, these ads have an end date. It's the summertime sales event. It's gonna run 2 months. Awesome. And then you just want to make sure there's a rate and term for that rate. And so I think getting these rates up front, one, helps you. Two, making an Excel spreadsheet of navigating your conflicts, and really just knowing that, just being confident in when you do submit a quote, know that you're worth it, right? And especially if you're getting that quote off of a tried and true rate guide, such as the GVA or the SAG-AFTRA, making a median, right? Like going through and saying, all right, this is what GVA charges, this is what SAG is. This is the area I need to sit in when a spot comes through for that usage, right? And I think just being confident on submitting these quotes and not having the follow-up and be like, well, I could do it for whatever like just know that when you're putting that out there, you're being confident in the fact of like, hey, it's okay if I know it's hard to say, but it's like be willing to lose that job and go on to the next, because if they're not going to pay you what you're worth, well, you're not, you know what I mean? They're not worth your time either. And that's how I feel too when I try to negotiate things for my clients. Granted, would I love to get every job? Of course, but the fact is not everybody has the budgets, and I'm okay with that. But you know what? There's caveats, right? So let's talk about just, and I have some time, so I can go into this.
Okay.
Do you guys have the time? Do we have the time?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Let's just talk about areas of where you can ask for more money, right? Limiting exclusivity, right? To say, hey guys, I can give you, if for instance, thing comes through for tech. Well, you're not going to get all tech, right? So I can give you tablets and computers for this, but you don't get watches and you don't get phones and you don't get, right? So there's all these different things. Hey, if you guys want that, this is what I would need additionally, right? That's an area that's like a side door to ask for more money. A term. Hey guys, if you guys need, well, in perpetuity, obviously you'd come back with multiple, and the way you do that, right? So let's just talk about the in perp thing, and then I can go back into the other thing. 10 years, you would break that down so it's financially advantageous for them to go with the 10-year option, right? So SAG, if you go on the SAG rate guide, and this is just a quick example of the OTT rate, there's a 4-week, an 8-week, and a 4-week, 26-week. I say that backwards. I'm sorry. 4-week, 13-week, and 1 year. Now, the 13-week option is basically $2,000. So if you're going to pay $2,000, why wouldn't you pay $5,625 for 52 weeks, right? So you have to think they made that way because if you were to pay for 26 weeks, you would pay $4,000. So what are they doing? They're corridoring you to go with the 1-year option. That's the exact same thing you would do on an imperp thing. You'd say, all right, here's my 1-year rate. 1-year rate per spot is going to be slightly higher than what the 3-year or the 5-year or even the 10-year. And so I do that all the time where I'm like, hey, your client would say if I put the 10-year option, granted, it might be a massive quote. Like I had one the other day, and it was like $86,000, but I was like, look, your client will save $27,000 a year off of this version versus the 1-year option, right? And so now it gets their brain thinking of, do we need this forever? No, probably not. So immediately they're going to drop down to a 3-year term or a 5-year term, or you know what, let's just go with the 1-year term because that's that. And so, but there's room now to say, okay, I will give you a better deal. You just have to guarantee me the time. And I think doing that, just making sure that like, hey, that correlates. What was sorry, I went into a tangent there and then I lost what I was going to talk about before. We're back on conflicts, or what was I mentioning?
No, we were back on just, your best piece of advice for
Oh yeah,
for the newer
yeah.
talent.
I would say just like I think I already talked about it, but just knowing your worth, creating a spreadsheet, staying organized, knowing what spots you're reading for, and also don't be afraid. Like how many times I've gotten where it's like we're gonna do one spot. The best thing you can do right now is just remember with time and volume comes discount. Not when you ask how many deliverables. Now, you know how many times they're like, we're working on 3 spots. I get 9 scripts. Well, why am I getting 9 scripts, right? So that's the biggest caveat. You'd say, all right, well, how many deliverables are you making versus how many spots? Because they may think 3 cores, but each of those may have 30, a 60. You have a 60, a 30, a 15, and a 6. Well, what if you have all of those? Now you have 4 deliverables per. Now you have 12 spots, right? 12 technically deliverables. Your second question is going to be, are they mechanical if they're cut downs? Now, what does that mean? Are they making them in post? You're reading the 60, and then they're going to mechanically create a 30, a 15, and a 6. That's different. then saying, all right, well, here's 12 scripts. Do I need to read them? And is the core information of those cut downs changed from the actual core 60? Right now, if they're adding new information to the spot that changes the original 60, guess what? It's a new spot. And so these things, asking how many deliverables gets rid of how many, all the gray area goes away. How many deliverables are you making? And then immediately following up with the fact of we have 5 spots with cut downs. How many cut downs, and are they mechanical? Am I reading them in the session? Because that changes. And you can, what I'll do is I'll package, if they're mechanical cut downs, mechanical edits, I'll say, hey, I'll do, 350 for the group of mechanical cuts, but I'm charging them maybe $4,000 on the course, right? And so again, with more cores, you get a discount, because I'm like, hey, if you guys want to make it 5 spots, I can drop it down to this. And they're like, oh, all right, let me get back to you. You know what I mean? And so this also, again, opens up the door for potentially making more money, right? And so trying to keep that negotiation thing going of saying, hey guys, I want to give you the best deal I can. If you can give me a couple more spots, I can adhere to your rate. And just keeping those questions active. And so I think those 2 things, if you're listening to this, write that down. And then along with the fact that you're gonna make a spreadsheet, because you need to know your business, right? When I interview talent for potentially being on the DPN roster, I'm like, what do you have running? How long is it running for? What conflicts do you have? And people that are like, I have no clue. It's like, it's like they could be the best voice talent ever, but without the organization, it's like, we're a team, the way I look at it, right? When I sign a talent, I'm here to track your conflicts, yes, on anything that I procure for you, of course. But it's hard when there's people who are working off platforms, or, so I rely on talent to say, hey, Vince, I did this thing. It was for this amount. It's going to be running in this thing, and it expires at this time. Great. I know that then they're conflicted to that area. And I try to play chess. Sometimes I have probably people that 8 to 10 people email or text me a day that say, hey, would this be worth it? No. You need to ask for this. This is what you should do. Or yes, do it, but then limit the term, or whatever it may be, because then at least I'm part of that chess match, and I can I'm trying to navigate that conflict realm for them. So we don't leave money on the table is really the biggest thing at the end of the day. And so I had this one girl, I had her turned on so many things last year, and she was like, I was like, it's going to come. It'll come. Sure enough, we had a booking come through, and she was like, oh my God, can you imagine if I would have done that thing? And I'm like, yeah, you would have missed out on like 50 grand just now. And so that's the difference. I try to educate my talent in that sense that, like, hey, we're a team. We got to work together. We work closely, and you need to be communicating everything that you work on. And at the end of the day, I don't want you to miss out on stuff, but I want us to be smart and nimble when it comes to navigating these things.
Yeah.
I think
So,
that's what's important.
communication and education have been the constant theme through this entire conversation. And I hope people were tuning in on that.
Thanks for summarizing that, JT. I have a problem with summarizing things. As you can see, I go off into the abyss a little bit. So thank you. Yeah.
So
anything else?
What are some things that you are fighting for right now? I know we talked a little bit in Dallas about bilingual talent and how they're getting the short end of the stick when it comes to negotiating. Can you talk a little bit about that, or anything else you're passionate about right now as well?
I actually have spoke to the one of the chair committees that's on for the union about that. And I think I had mentioned it in Dallas, and I got into the story of it and the way so right now, if you were a bilingual talent, you would be booked via the union and the JPC. They've allowed Spanish spots to be considered versions of the English. Now, what does that mean? You're getting a session fee still for that. So if you read 8 spots, 4 of them in English and 4 of them in Spanish, you're still getting the $588.90, right? But at the end of the day, you're only getting a line of residuals off of 4 of those spots versus 8. So that's a big problem. I think that's a massive problem, because what you're telling me here is the Spanish language is subsidiary to English, and you're penalizing talent that can speak bilingual. right? So I told the story, but I had got a massive agency to switch that over for me and say, I had a long conversation. I said, well, why would anybody want to be bilingual then? Why would you submit? I go, you can hire him in English, you can hire him in Spanish, but you can't hire him in both. If you want to adhere to that rule. And I go, what you guys are going to have to do on the back end now is you're going to have to go find a Spanish talent or an English talent to sound like my guy here. And you're going to have to pay double costs on studio fees. You're going to have to double up on all your time because now you have another session to do. And technically you would have to, you're hiring two separate people. So you're paying it separate. There's two separate lines of residuals now. And what am I saving you by giving you my guy who can give you, who's bilingual? I'm saving you time. I'm saving you money. And so why are we being penalized for that? And they totally understood. They said, oh my God, we see what you're saying. We'll adhere to your way. And I commend that. I thought it was great. I was like, hey, but the problem is it's that I've seen on castings, bilingual talent. First question David and I ask, and David runs the foreign division. So I handle some, because I have the general market account. It'll bleed over and I'll do the Spanish stuff as well. But David's, mainly battling this on an everyday basis. And, his first question is there two lines of residuals? And they're like, oh, whatever casting or whatever. They're like, let me get back to you. And so we will either submit on the caveat that there needs to be two lines of residuals, or say you can hire this guy in Spanish or you can hire him English. So I think that's important. I think the union's going to do the right thing. They meet this October, next month. And I have expressed all my concerns and very valid points, I believe. And I think in a time of inclusion, where we're trying to make everything equal, that there shouldn't be a pay discrepancy for Spanish talent.
Agreed.
Period.
And Sixta Morel, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Sixta, but I love you anyway. She was just saying, even when they do the same work, they get paid, like even if it's just a Spanish job, the rates are lower. So consistently, the rates are lower for Spanish jobs.
Well, I wouldn't say, because the union has the same rates, right? So those rates are cohesive. Maybe the runs, what the media buy is on the opposite end. So
And it
that
could be non-union.
and so on, maybe on non-union, right? So that may be on non-union. I specifically, me and David really doesn't like to work on non-union Spanish, to be honest with you. He's and if it is, it better pay a lot of money. And so, I mean, he's the same way I am when it comes down to his roster. He's very curated and he goes to bat for everybody he has. And so I think that's just so important, that it's like, hey, if the juice is going to be worth the squeeze, if we're going to do this non-union, because really it's, it is hard to find good Spanish talent. And I think when you're a commodity in the sense of where you are wanted and needed, why would anybody pay less? At this point, you should be paying more, right? I mean,
love it.
talking geographically speaking, there's more general market English speaking talent than there are Spanish speaking talent. So, I
Supply and
mean,
demand.
less of something, the cost goes up. And so that's how I personally feel. But I mean, for the most part, I just want equality when it comes to lines of residuals. I mean, I think that's very crazy in my eyes. And I've been very vocal about it. And I think I said it, I mentioned it in tags, calling them tags in Dallas, because it was an automotive situation. And via the union, they have changed that if you record a spot, they used to make it where it was on a model change. So if, for instance, it was the Chevy Silverado and you were doing these other models, well, you get a session fee per model.
Right.
And now they consider them tags, which is, that's okay. Hey, that I will deal with that. But he had already recorded all the chords, and then and I thought in my head, because when you're getting session fees per, totally fine, until the next session, they were like, hey, he's recorded all these chords, we're tagging these out. And then everything was considered, the general markets was considered session fees and the Spanish were considered tax. And I was like, hold on here. And that's how I unraveled this. And they said, well, technically they're versions because he's been paid session fees for those, but they don't have a line of residuals. And that's when this whole can of worms imploded out.
So for our Spanish speaking talent who have agency representation that isn't DPN, if knowing that this is coming up for SAG to make decisions on and vote on, it would be wise for them to talk to their agents and ask for them to advocate on their behalf on that.
I 100% agree. I think the more people in the Spanish community, and especially agents that are handling Spanish, can be aware of this and know that they shouldn't be just considered versions and paid out a session fee, that they should have their own line of residuals. I think just like anything else, it'll snowball, and I think that change should be made for sure. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. Sixta said to tell you thank you for that as well. So
yes.
JT, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you, Vince, so much.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to say thank you for being here, and we know you have a heart out. So before Kelly gets mad that we kept you too late,
So to walk in and be like,
just,
what's happening, dude? Are you
I
still
know.
on? For sure.
Although we'd get to see the bear.
Yeah,
So
I know, little bear. I know. I was gonna say if they were to walk in, I would definitely have little Bougie Bear on the.
aw. Okay.
Well,
Well, now you're tempting us to keep you, but we'll let you
yes.
go. And we thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Happy Friday, guys. Have a great weekend, and thanks to everybody who's listening. I really enjoyed being here. So,
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
all right, take care, guys.
Bye.